Thanks so much. So to start off, just with a certain preface to what I'm about to say, I'll be talking about, thank you, the more practical and technological aspects of the legal aspects of humanitarian aid. And in this respect, I'll try to get a discussion. No, these are not my slides, actually. Yep, these are my slides. I'll try to get a discussion going on the question of how technology can help us to protect and ensure respect of human rights, free choice, and autonomy, and how technology can assist us to find the delicate equipoise between the provision of effective and efficient humanitarian aid on the one hand, and the protection of privacy, which has long been recognized as a human right, and a potential derivative of this right, the protection of personal data on the other hand. I will talk about cash transfer programming, or CTP, and about blockchain technology. I think this slide went too far. Yeah. So the point of departure for this discussion is that humanitarian action is as old as time itself. We can find evidence already in the Holy Scriptures of giving to the less fortunate, and this notion developed over time to philanthropy and something more organized. And in the 19th century, with the writings of the likes of Henri Dedon, it moved to an organized international humanitarian action. But the method of providing international humanitarian action has too developed over time. What started off as help in kind by way of giving people rice, potatoes, and water turned into giving them vouchers to buy food so as to respect their autonomy and free decision to decide what it is that they eat and how they feed their family. But the problem with vouchers is that they get lost and they get stolen and then they get forged and they are difficult to monitor. So over time, humanitarian organizations moved to work with local and domestic banks. So how would that work? A humanitarian organization, say the World Food Program, would advance money to a local bank with a list of beneficiaries for whom entitlements should be open. The bank would then create these accounts and notify the beneficiary that they have their account and they can go ahead and get their entitlements. The problem is that not everyone can have a bank account. There are over 2 billion people who have no form of identification. KYC and AML regulations, know your customer, and anti-money laundering, let alone terrorism finance, prevent people with no identification from opening these bank accounts. But even if we put that to one side, there's also the problem that when a humanitarian organization advances money, this bank sometimes disappears, or the money disappears as a result of corruption or political instability. So the money would not get to the end beneficiary. And even if we put that to one side, there is the problem of flexibility. The need to advance money up front to provide a list of beneficiaries. It takes time, it costs fees, and in the meantime, people go without food and without aid. And with that in mind, the method of delivery changed again, and we started resorting to technology, more specifically to cash transfer programming, or CTP. CTP refers to the method of providing direct cash or vouchers to people who have been hurt in crisis or war. CTP is not a program in and of itself, but rather a method of delivery, and I will address two such methods: mobile money and smart cards, or e-cards. So mobile money, how does that work? By the way, chart courtesy of Privacy International, gotta give credit where credit is due. It works similarly as a bank account. The humanitarian organization will contact a local telecom company and will give it a list of beneficiaries for whom the local telecom company should offer phones, SIM cards, or apps depending on context. These then are provided to the individual. For the individual, this works like a regular bank account with the wallet stored on a mobile phone. That person can then take the mobile phone, go to a local mobile money agent, and make deposits or withdraw from his mobile account, or transfer money to a holder of a different mobile money account. This has been operating rather effectively in over 10 years in 10 different countries, mostly sub-Saharan Africa, and has allowed to grant millions of people millions of dollars in entitlements over the years. This is considered to be a rather efficient and effective method of providing help but there are also shortcomings and problems with this. Me, for instance, I'm an Audi lawyer. I read terms and conditions, and I opened the terms and conditions of Safaricom, one of the main providers of mobile money in Kenya, under the M-Pesa program, and I learned that they store personal information and information that they get from the access to SMS messages and SIM cards for 7 years or for as long as necessary. I also learned that they share this information not only with law enforcement agencies and not only with financial institutions, but also with metadata collecting units. So to put it very delicately, Safaricom arguably is potentially placed to sell personal data of those who receive humanitarian aid years after the crisis has ended. And this is potentially problematic because it allows to track and profile those who receive aid as part of a vulnerable situation. And these people are not really in a position to open the terms and conditions of their mobile service. But there are other ways to go about it as well. And next are smart cards or e-cards. Again, here that we avoid the need for a bank and we avoid the need for a mobile company. What we use is rather a smart card company like MasterCard. A smart card looks like a regular credit card or a debit card. It stores a chip that connects 10-digit identity, not necessarily the name of the person, for instance, not necessarily my name, but rather 10 digits that represent my identity, with a wallet. The holder of this smart card can then use vouchers or cash that are stored on the card and are not necessarily linked to a bank, so as to settle their bills with a local store or withdraw money at an ATM. In Lebanon, for instance, the one-card pilot allowed to provide aid to hundreds of thousands of various refugees in the country who could shop food in over 500 different stores across the state. They would need to go to a store, do their shopping, and then settle the bill by using an electric device that clears transactions, pardon me, with Banque Libre Française. In 2016, in average, in a month, between 18 million and 22 million US dollars were distributed through smart cards in Lebanon. And this is important. Because each transaction is recorded on the smart card, it gives the UN better ability to control the amount of money and entitlements that are spread across the population and make better informed decisions this way with respect to the allocation of funds in this country and in future areas. Each transaction is time-stamped, geolocated, it records the amount of the transaction and makes a reference to the shop or device that has been engaged. In this way, the UN is also able to track irregular and atypical transactions and know perhaps where there is a shop that seems to be extra popular in a given week, and why is that? Perhaps it is a case of fraud. Thing is that although these smart cards connect 10-digit identification with an e-wallet, thereby granting pseudonymity to those who receive humanitarian aid, they do not grant full anonymity. Metadata analysis of the information produced and stored by the smart card, which is, by the way, in the possession of third parties who are for-profit businesses, allows to identify the identity of those receiving aid. Moreover, an analysis of the information stored and produced on the smart card in the aggregate allows to make inferences about behavioral patterns of certain populations. For instance, what you will see in this map is the migration patterns of a particular refugee population in Lebanon between 2014 and 2015. Where an e-card holder moved from one place to another, there is a line that connects these dots. You will note a particular movement around Beirut, Saida, and the Bekaa Valley. How do I know this? It took me 3 minutes, literally 3 minutes to come up with this data. So you can understand that someone with a particular flair to metadata analysis and technology can get quite a lot more. And this is readily available and accessible online. So what all of these methods of delivery and technology have in common, whether it's banking, smart cards, or mobile money, is that they rely heavily on third-party intermediaries. And the moment that you have a third party involved, in particular when this third party is not a humanitarian aid provider, but a for-profit business corporation, you have certain problems. You open yourself up for concerns over the protection of personal data and what happens with this personal data later on. Moreover, according to the World Food Program itself, upwards of 30% of the funds that are allocated for humanitarian aid do not make it to the end beneficiaries as a result of corruption. And this is mind-blowing. This is a lot of money that doesn't go to anyone. So what do we do? Ideally, we will need a solution that allows a clear record of things in a transparent manner, and in a manner that does not involve third parties, does not require to share information and whatnot. And with this, I move to blockchain. So I'll ease into that. What is this blockchain that people keep talking about? Blockchain is a decentralized peer-to-peer network where each participant on the blockchain maintains a replica of a shared ledger that stores digitally signed transactions. Still with me, breathe. Okay. Then, cryptographic techniques make it virtually impossible to modify the information that is stored on the blockchain. So the ledger can be appended to, but it cannot be virtually modified. The participants in the chain keep this record in sync through a consensus protocol. Everyone on the chain always has the same information, and this information cannot be deleted or distorted. It only can be added to. Okay, this creates an immutable, transparent record that virtually cannot be corrupted. So instead of relying on traditional intermediaries like financial institutions and banks to confirm and authenticate transactions, there is a mathematical consensus protocol in place that determines and administers the rules of a transaction and updates the record accordingly. Everyone always has the same thing. No one can touch that. This improves the interoperability and collaboration between the participants in the chain. Please stay with me, ma'am. It's going to get better. I should also clarify, well, that's the future.
She needs to summarize.
I need to summarize.
Give an example.
Every blockchain is on the continuum between private and public, completely decentralized. The difference is in the following practical features. Who can join the chain? If it's everyone or particular people, what type of information can they upload and see on this blockchain? And the more people, the more public and decentralized the blockchain is, the slower the speed of transaction is, because it takes more time to create a replica for each and every single person. Bitcoin, for instance, is a public decentralized blockchain. Because it takes so much time and so much energy to create a replica, what is known as mining, the person who does that receives an award in the form of a Bitcoin. Yeah, that's what Bitcoin is all about. It's creating replicas of information on a blockchain. I should also clarify something about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. While blockchain technology was introduced through and hand in hand with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, crypto is not the only application of this technology. It is but one example. Okay? So the negative PR that is associated with crypto and the concerns and regulation affiliated with it are not applicable verbatim to other uses of this technology. And I will illustrate to make it clearer. Take China. China has significant limitations in place on the ability to sell or offer cryptocurrencies to individuals or businesses in its jurisdiction. It even reportedly banned the sale or buying of computing and hardware equipment that is required for the mining of Bitcoin and other crypto. At the same time, last September, the Chinese Supreme Court held that evidence that were collected and stored on the blockchain are reliable and admissible. And as a result of this ruling, internet courts in China today accept into evidence digital information insofar as it has been collected and stored by the relevant parties through blockchain. It is digitally verified and signed with a clear timestamp and has a verifiable hash value. So cryptocurrency, no. Blockchain to store, collect, and introduce evidence, yes. As another example, take the US. The US, the SEC, the securities regulator in the US, has significant limitations on the ability to make initial coin offerings to US citizens. At the same time, troops abroad were allowed to vote using a mobile app based on blockchain technology in the federal elections in West Virginia. Voting through blockchain also piloted successfully in Japan, South Korea, and Switzerland. And I bet you dollars to donuts that come the next election in Israel, unless it's in a week, we will have a serious discussion, if not already piloting, voting through blockchain. This is because it is a mutable, transparent record where the information stored cannot be modified. And this is important. And the UN is taking note of these features of blockchain. What the World Food Program essentially did, at least in Jordan, it took intermediaries completely out of the picture. No mobile companies, no smart card issuers, no banks, and replaced them with a private permission blockchain that uses a Ethereum client with a proof of authority consensus algorithm. Don't be alarmed. What it essentially does is the following. It tapped into the biometric data of Syrian refugees in Jordan and uploaded this information on the blockchain. For each individual, it uploads entitlements. The person can then go to a grocery store in the camp or next to the camp and with a single scan of the irises, confirm their identity, query their account, and settle the bill. Because instantaneously, this information is recorded and uploaded on the blockchain. No banks, no information shared, no money advanced, no third parties, no animals hurt during the experiment, and it's completely gluten-free. So this allowed the UN to save over 98% of the fees that are associated with the distribution of entitlements. So far in this data, as of January 2019, they reached over 100,000 refugees in Jordan, and they hope to reach all 500,000 of them. This allowed to transfer over $23 million in entitlements in over 1 million different transactions, zero hiccups, zero problems, no fraud. So blockchain is certainly making its steps in humanitarian aid and in the provision and distribution of humanitarian aid. What is more is that it already facilitates the interoperability between various agencies of the UN. Using the biometric data of refugees, they upload these entitlements. Other agencies, for instance, we might think of the World Health Organization, could also tap into this information and update it. So we would have the vaccination record and medical history of these refugees in an immutable, transparent manner that travels with them as they settle into normality, as it were. This is far more convenient than using paper or anything that requires third parties. Finally, what I would like to conclude with the following notion. Technological advances bring about spectacular opportunities for the provision of humanitarian aid. They allow us to provide efficient, effective, and quick aid to more people in less time. They also increase the accountability of aid because it's more transparent and it's easier to monitor and less gets lost in corruption. At the same time, this is done somewhat and sometimes at the expense of person's private and personal data, and the question with whom it is shared and how is it is stored. It is therefore my understanding that under the do no harm commitment, humanitarian practitioners and humanitarian organizations are obliged, not recommended, obliged to conduct an analysis of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the technology that they use in the provision of humanitarian aid and see what fits where and for what purposes. It is my personal suggestion that as part of this analysis, humanitarian organizations will consider the use of blockchain technology as a reliable method to store information in an immutable fashion, as well as artificial intelligence and the metadata analysis that it allows of this information, so as to make sure that we are safeguarding the privacy and protection of personal data of the vulnerable population. Thank you for your time.
That was brilliant. I have so many questions, but let's hear Rosa as well, and then we can have what I'm sure will be a fascinating